All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a course that did something really radical. It stopped asking students to just sit back and consume information. And instead, it gave them the tools to build their very own virtual learning worlds. Let's break down how they pulled it off.
It's the big question for every educator, right? How do you get past just memorizing facts and create something that actually sticks? Well, this course we're looking at, called VR Takes You to Play the World, tackled this head on. They basically handed students the keys to a whole new kind of classroom.
The main tool here was virtual reality. But why VR? Well, it's not just for the cool factor. It lets you go places that are impossible to get to. Maybe they're too expensive, too dangerous, or they don't even exist anymore. But as the course designers knew, just showing up in a virtual world isn't enough. The real magic is in what you do once you're there.
And that brings us to the first and maybe most important part of the course design. The instructors knew that the wow factor of VR wears off. A cool virtual space is fun for a minute, but what makes you care? Their answer was simple, and it was brilliant. A good story.
To prove this point, they didn't just lecture about it, they ran a little experiment. They had students try 2 different virtual tours. The first one was a super polished, high-quality tour of a real historic fort. Looked great, but it was basically a virtual textbook. The second one, The Mystery of the Underground House, was a bit rougher around the edges, but it had a story, a mission, and puzzles you had to solve.
And the student feedback? It was immediate, and it wasn't even close. Just like this student said, the mystery tour was way more interesting because it gave them something to do. The first tour was passive, the second one was active. And that proved a huge point. What really gets you engaged is the experience, not just how pretty the pictures are.
Look, this wasn't an accident. The whole course was built on these timeless rules of storytelling. Students were taught to think like writers first. They had to figure out their theme, their characters, their conflict, all before they built a single thing. This put that story-first idea right into practice.
Okay, so story is king. The students get it. But then you hit the big wall, right? How can a regular student actually build a virtual world without being some kind of professional 3D artist? And this brings us to the second pillar of the course, using AI as a creative partner.
The course taught a totally new kind of skill. It wasn't about coding. It was about communication. Students learned how to write really good prompts, basically clear instructions to tell an AI what to create. It's kind of like this lighthouse here. The core idea is that beam of light, but it's the specific instructions about style and texture that shape it into something powerful. And they had this amazing toolkit to play with. With just text, they could create the entire 360-degree scene for their story. They could generate 3D models of clues or objects for players to discover. They could even create talking characters to guide people through the experience. All of a sudden, these huge technical hurdles that would have killed a project, they were just gone. Students were free to create.
So you've got the philosophy, story first, and you've got the enabler, these incredible AI tools. But how do you stop that from just becoming total chaos? Well, you need a framework. You need a blueprint to guide the students from a cool idea to a finished VR experience anyone can try.
And this was their secret weapon, the project script. Before they touched any software, students had to map everything out. What's the main point? Who's it for? How does the player actually interact with it? And I love this part. They even had to connect their project to one of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which gave their stories a real sense of purpose. This script was the master plan.
With that script in hand, the students followed a really clear 6-step workflow. It wasn't just go build something. It was a structured path, from that initial script to gathering all their assets, putting it all together in the VR platform, and finally publishing it with a simple web link. It took them from pure imagination to a real, shareable thing.
So that's the whole design. A really smart mix of storytelling, AI tools, and a solid project plan. But did it work? Let's get to the most important data point of all, what the students themselves had to say. The results were, well, they're kind of staggering. When students were asked to rate their own learning, an incredible 88% gave themselves a 4 or 5 out of 5 for AI image generation. This tells you the course wasn't just fun and games. The students felt they were walking away with real
valuable skills.
And this student's comment, this gets right to the heart of why it was so successful. The AI wasn't doing the thinking for them. It was handling the boring, repetitive stuff. That freed up their brain power to focus on what actually matters, being creative, thinking critically, and coming up with new ideas.
I mean, you just have to love a quote like this. It shows the kind of relationship the students built with these tools. AI wasn't some scary, complicated thing. It became a partner, a capable assistant, a good friend. That shift in perception is a huge win for the course design.
And this last piece of feedback might be the most telling of all. It shows that even a student who walked in not knowing what to expect, who might have even been a little skeptical, walked away having had an interesting, engaging, and genuinely positive experience. For any teacher, that is the ultimate goal. So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, what can we learn from this course? It really gives us a powerful blueprint for how we can design learning experiences that are so much more engaging and effective.
It all boils down to these 4 key ideas. 1. Lead with story. The tech is just the vehicle. The story is the destination. 2. Use AI as a co-creator, so you're empowering students to build, not just consume. 3. Give them a clear framework, like that project script, to guide their creativity. And finally, 4. Listen to your learners. Their feedback is the single most valuable metric you have.
You know, in the end, this course wasn't just about teaching VR and AI. It was about fundamentally changing the role of the student, from a passive consumer into an active architect of their own education. And that leaves us with a really exciting question to ponder. If students now have the power to build their own learning worlds, what does the classroom of tomorrow even look like? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.